Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and I'm happy to welcome in Derek Szopa. He is the CEO of CloudSort, and we're going to be breaking down the middle mile in today's conversation, which I'm pretty pumped about because on this show a lot, we talk about the last mile and the first mile, but we rarely talk about the middle mile. So Derek, this perfect opportunity. Welcome into the show.
Great. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into the logistics side of things, I was checking out your LinkedIn profile earlier today, and I noticed you have more than 7 years in the Marine Corps as far as your experience is concerned, serving most of those years as captain. How do you think that your Marine background has helped shape your entry into the corporate world, which you've been in for a while, but I'm always curious about how the military helps out, with the regular civilian jobs, as they might say.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think for me, the military was, the military gives a lot of like young leaders a chance to lead big things, and I think that's one of the great things about it. The other kind of aspect of the military, I was fortunate in a lot of the roles that I had. I was able to be creative, try new things. I don't know if it was just luck or just kind of like found ways to do that, but my leaders always kind of allowed that to happen, embraced it. Part of the Marine Corps is about kind of small unit leadership and being resourceful with kind of you know limited things to use. And so I don't know, I thought it was good for a lot of reasons for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with just based on the folks, the military folks that I have in my family and in close network of friends, it really is one of those things where a lot of them have gone on to play a role in logistics, which I think is really interesting because I think it's a lot of similar roles in logistics as you have limited resources and you have to be able to problem solve very, very quickly. Is that a safe assumption of your experience as well, going from the military to logistics?
Absolutely. Was in a lot of situations where there just wasn't a lot of resources and that ability we needed the logistic support. So it was always a part of everything that we did. It was never, nothing worked without the logistic support. So I would say that's completely fair. Absolutely.
And with your after you got out of the military, so you went to so you were at FedEx for 8 years, you were 5 years at Amazon before founding CloudSort, close to 4 years ago. What did you see at your time with working with FedEx and Amazon? What did you see as sort of like the inefficiencies that made you want to go and become a founder of a company?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, and you touched on a little bit of this. So if you think back to 2016, 17, 18, there was a tremendous amount, billions of dollars being put to work on the fulfillment side as well as on the final mile side. But there wasn't a lot of discussion about the middle mile. When, middle miles can be defined maybe a lot of different ways. When, as I'm talking about, it's really about from the time that package is born till the time that package is really like in a final mile delivery station or on a final mile route. So that those technologies, processes, systems in place to allow that package good to get to that point. Like that's when we're talking middle mile, that's pretty much what we're talking about. And so, billions of dollars being put to work on both sides of the equation, but not a lot of dollars, interest, thought leadership in this middle mile space. And so, yeah.
Why do you think that
To
is?
me,
Yeah, I was going to say, why do you think that is as far as the middle mile is concerned? That, it kind of feels like I don't want to say a recent thing because you've been working on this for 4 years, but comparatively so to, some of these other industries that have been around for decades. Why do you think the middle mile I don't want to say like the redheaded stepchild?
probably a couple of reasons. It's a bit intimidating because the thought, when someone says middle mile sortation, I think the mind goes to, hey, I need really heavy infrastructure, a lot of mechanical, heavy industrial engineering, big sort centers, and that may be true. Our position going into it was that the world's changed in the sense that, in a lot of ways, but in ways relevant to the middle mile, the world's changed in the sense that advancements in technology, like there's been tremendous strides in just computational power that's out there. So that unlocks potential. There's been this kind of general trend towards having smaller, lightweight devices or things that are connected in a smart way. We thought that was interesting, and maybe there's some things we could learn there that we could bring into the middle mile. There was, cloud computing. A lot of it has to do with computing and just that ability to use computational or software engineering to replace heavy industry. And so I think that unlocks like a way to design things that are at lower capital cost and allow a more scalable way to execute the middle mile. So I think a lot of it is like, why haven't people looked at it a lot, or why did it not have a lot of interest early on? I think it was intimidating because of the capital requirements. And because it's the complexities associated with it. It's just like, how do I even get started? It's such a big, complicated problem if you just kind of look at it, from a very high level.
And so as you're noticing these evolutions in technology and the lack of focus on the middle mile, what was sort of the I guess the catalyst for you to say, like, I want to create a solution for this problem. I want to found a company. I want to start CloudSort. Take me back to that decision that was sort of like the light bulb moment for you, that you wanted to take on this journey of being a founder.
Yeah, I think when I started the company, it wasn't 100% clear like what we needed to do. I think there was such a broad space that it was, and I had some ideas about how to apply technology and allow a company to begin without, hundreds of millions of dollars to build out a complete, you didn't need to build out a complete like end-to-end solution. So there wasn't a big aha moment. It was this gradual realization that there wasn't resources being put into this space. I had some thoughts on how we could move goods in a smarter way, and then when we started CloudSort, the initial thought was we take some off-the-shelf technology, we kind of piece it together, and that would allow us to move packages across the country and start to get to work. What we discovered was, and this was a challenge getting started, it just didn't exist. We did some time doing some research, unless you wanted to buy, like a multi-million-dollar sortation, like physical operation, there wasn't just off-the-shelf sortation technology that was out there that was remotely capable of doing the things that we needed to do at CloudSort. So we took a step back, kind of reset our priorities, decided to go ahead and build out that basic software tech stack. So we spent a year or so doing that. And then from there, able to deploy that, get our first client started, and we've been growing ever since.
No, I love that, because you kind of commonly hear a lot in business, and it's kind of coming to a reckoning right now is in the tech landscape, that somebody just has an idea and Silicon Valley has sort of just thrown a $50 million at them, and they can get the ground up going for their business. But you rarely hear about those stories about the business owners that just recognize a problem and they sort of self-fund it and find it their own, to get that scrappy mentality of we're just going to continue building this brick by brick without having the constraints of what VC model is like, which I think is really interesting. So kudos to you for taking that route. And there was there on YouTube, I was looking you guys up, and there was a video, the great commercial that you guys had, and it said, our supply chain relies on an outdated system that's been in place for decades. The original advantages of this hub and spoke model, built on centralization and fewer direct routes, has now become a disadvantage. Now, before we get into sort of the solution side of things, can you break down some examples of where some of those legacy systems kind of are inadequate?
There's probably a lot to talk about here. Think about what comes to mind. It's really it ends up being a very static system. I think that's one of the problems with it. And maybe I should qualify a bit that the hub and spoke design is always going to have a role. There's not, it's such a massive amount of infrastructure that it's out there. I'm not of the mind. True. I'm not so naive that something's going to come out and just completely replace all of that. I think it can be complemented, not complicated. There's a way to complement what exists with kind of a better design. So the hub and spoke model, there's tremendous risk associated with these hubs, in the sense that if there's an outage, demand patterns change.
It's like the airlines, with all the airline controversy that just happened. I think that's a great example of. It's like
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no worries. But I think that maybe is what you're talking about, like the airline example.
Correct.
Where you have a weather event going on in one city, and because that's a hub, it ruins everything else.
Absolutely. It requires for, if you're anticipating it, you have to make changes, and you can readjust, you can put transportation assets in the right locations to kind of adjust to the weather, but it ends up being very difficult to do, and they're very static systems. And it doesn't take advantage of a lot of this computational power that's out there. So yeah, that's certainly one problem with it. The other one is the capital requirement that we talked about. These hubs are massively expensive, and to build one, you need a tremendous amount of volume to cover the fixed costs associated with that investment. And so that can work, or maybe it does. Like, it just, you have to take
work for a very small amount of people, maybe.
Correct. It works for a very small amount of people. That's a very nicely said. But it doesn't work for the masses. And also it complicates the procurement process. So you think about the relationship between a shipper and a carrier. If you have a shipper that wants to ship a lot of packages, that infrastructure has to be built. If the infrastructure is expensive, it's a hurdle that becomes like a complication to getting like a really good agreement in place. So how do you we ask questions like that of ourselves, like how do you change that thinking, or how can CloudSort create a better way for carriers and shippers to work together? Our thought is attack the cost basis, and part of that is on the fixed cost side. So if we can reduce cost of hubs, sorry, I'm leaning into the solutions a little bit, I'll try to back off of that, but it's certainly important. So the capital requirements of these buildings is massive, and we view it as an opportunity. Like, how do we address that?
It almost.
So I think those are probably the two main ones.
It's almost sound like it's almost that like the hubs are put in really, I don't want to say like high areas of congestion, but that's what maybe they're creating is those levels of high levels of congestion. And then there could be maybe more efficient routes to take to avoid that congestion. Kind of like, I guess, maybe how the boats or the ships that are on the West Coast, they were diverting to, other states like Texas and Florida when, they're backed up for like 72 days or something like that.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And there's other examples of this out there, and Southwest has gotten away from it a little bit, but Southwest really, instead of having a big hub network, they're really focused on the point-to-point design. I know they had some technical problems that hurt them a bit recently, but like the concept has worked really well for a long time and really allowed a really high level of performance. So I think that's a good analogy. And there's certainly other ones that are out there, like you said, having boats that can go to different ports, inject closer to points of entry. Yeah, I think these are examples of kind of the way that we think about things.
And so going into, I guess, sort of my next question is, so what you kind of talked about is this high capital that's been required of, these hub and spoke models. It also creates a certain amount of congestion, which I imagine that both of those things create, inefficiencies downstream for a lot of the market. So where does CloudSort sort of fit into the complexity of those problems and then solving those problems?
So the CloudSort model is, we believe, smaller, lightweight, low-cost operations or nodes, whatever you want to call them, and have a lot of them. And these nodes can be a standalone node that the CloudSort establishes. CloudSort can work with clients to establish sortation inside of their operations. It can really be put anywhere. So it allows us to do is move the work to the point of greatest value creation. And oftentimes the analogy I like to use here is just think about interest. Like, how does that work? It compounds over time. So if you can sometimes it's a little bit painful to invest early, but if you can do that, then the benefits of that compound over the entire life of that investment. In our terms, the entire life of that, that package delivery as it's routing through the system. So making a really good first touch, the benefits of that compounds through the entire journey of that package. So we're these smaller, lightweight operations that are connected in a smart way, more direct connections, move decision making into the realm of software versus relying on like a really efficient hub operation. So maybe put differently, just focus on the software and less on heavy like industrial engineering at a local level. We want the system to think globally. That's what we're designing for. We're less interested in having a single operation or standalone operations that are really efficient. We would rather skip steps and route things direct because it's cheaper, it's faster, there's fewer defects. Like CloudSort blazes up.
Maybe like a couple like use cases, a couple like example customers that would benefit from a system like this. I mean, I'm off the top of my head, I'm kind of thinking of like maybe produce would see an advantage and using, a model like this. Maybe, I don't know, like flowers or perishable goods or something like that. What are some I guess ideal customers that maybe are already using the platform or would be a good fit for using the platform?
Yeah, I think the ideal customers are ones that are a bit more sophisticated or think differently about package good delivery. So instead of the dialogues that CloudSort has with clients isn't just how many packages do you want to ship and here's a rate to get those packages delivered. We want to enable an ecosystem. So in engaging with CloudSort, it's how do you want to participate in the ecosystem? Do you want an end-to-end solution? Do you want to just tender packages to an organization and have them provide that solution? We're happy to do that. But I think where the value is really created is you have packages, you as a client have packages to ship. CloudSort can step in and also ask questions about do you have excess real estate? And it can be very small, like, hey, we can squeak, couple thousand square feet in the corner of a building, maybe we can put that to work. Do you have transportation that's moving across the country that there's excess space in that we can use? We ask questions about not just the supply side, but also the demand side. So then we can enable, on the shipper side, we can enable those shippers to kind of create their own solutions. And now they have more control over their supply chain and they can build those direct connections. The same thing holds true on the carrier side. Excuse me. We've had carriers that, because of their location, they're geographically removed from shippers like volume that they would like to tap into. We can just as easily work on the carrier's behalf to make that connection. We're not in the business of monetizing final mile carrier rates. That's not what we do. So we want to, I don't know of a better way of saying it than that CloudSort wants to enable this ecosystem. And as long as it's related to sortation and movements of goods between that point of origin and the destination, we want to support everybody. I think we play an important role, but we don't, we're kind of agnostic to carriers or shippers. To go back to your question a little bit, like who are the best shippers to work with? again, generally it's ones that are open to talking about resources they have on the supply side, because now we can eliminate cost and we're designing a better system versus, having to build out a system to support the volume, if that makes any sense.
So it almost sounds like maybe it's custom solutions for each of those different profiles. So for shippers, obviously
It's
they have
always
different
been that.
needs than carriers. And so how does, I guess, maybe CloudSort fit into the technology stack or the workday of each of those different profiles? Is it almost just like an integration directly into their TMS, or is it a platform that they log into as a carrier to see if there's any available loads? Like, tell me a little bit about how, I guess, the use cases for the software for each of those different profiles.
Yeah, probably the best example is just cut out of a fulfillment center being able to create additional splits or destinations.
Hmm.
So instead of building one bulk load that's going to one carrier, we can create a group of pallets and allow that fulfillment center to build to more carriers or more locations. And that could be done on behalf of the shipper or 3PL, or it could be done on behalf of a carrier that's working with that shipper. Again, it doesn't matter to us.
Hmm.
The integration with their TMS or their warehouse management system, we can definitely do that. I think there's value to be had there, but we can also we can do a very lightweight integration. By that I mean we can oftentimes we can sort off of information in the barcode.
Hmm.
The software will allow a tremendous amount of complexity in how things are sorted. So it can be a combination of zip codes and carriers and package characteristics. So really, it's very flexible, and we can design it to whatever the carrier or the shipper needs. We we think we've built some good logic into how things can be routed, but we're not so arrogant to think that we have the solutions to everybody's problems. So
Sure.
we enable clients to come to us, and they may have their own design or thought on how they want things routed. If there's a way we can support that, like I said, we want to play our role in the ecosystem, and for some, that's the role they want us to play. It's very prescribed. We need these splits. This is the design we want executed, and we can match that design with infrastructure that's out there and allow that to happen.
That's really interesting because from like a coding perspective, there's also I had in my notes that it is you're calling it a fundamental shift by putting the customers and the carriers and the shippers all on the same team. And so it almost sounds like there's that custom solution within the software capabilities that then allows, sort of these other profiles to almost put whatever they're already doing, but just make it more efficient and almost on steroids.
Correct. Or provide access to new geographies. So there may be a carrier that has a presence in the southern part of the country, but they want some sort of access to the northern. We can establish that and allow sortation to be executed on their behalf. It's maybe about providing access is part of what we do.
And so from, I guess, like a customer perspective, so say I'm a customer and you've sold me on the product, I'm ready to get rolling. What does that sort of onboarding process look like for the customer initially, once they decide that they're gonna make the jump, they're gonna take the leap?
Yeah, so I mean, at this point, we've probably gone through and we've talked about some of those things that we discussed earlier. We understand volume flows, where it's going. We understand, is this an operation? Is CloudSort setting up an operation within the client's location, or is it a standalone operation? So we've worked all that out. There's going to be a lot. It could be a very
It's probably, it sounds like it's marketing, like it varies.
Yeah,
it's probably going to vary for each customer.
Trying to think of it is going to vary for each customer. I mean, we have all the APIs, we can use, clients can use those APIs as a, kind of part of the solution. So we can be very tightly integrated in that way. we can provide a lot more scan visibility as things are moving through buildings and things are moving across the country. Some clients want that. Some are more interested in, hey, it's a very simple, we just need a very simple sort executed, and we're happy to do that as well. And those integrations can be very, very light. It can be, in fact, in some instances, we've done no integration. It's just, hey, we're provided information on the information in the package barcode, so we can program our system to understand the barcode. We can do the splits wherever the client needs us to do it. We can set up those operations very, very quickly. There's a story, one operation we needed it executed very quickly. We got keys to the building in the morning, and we were able to sort packages that evening. It's a very lightweight, quick to deploy system. So for your viewers and listeners, it's, as we talk about middle mile and sortation, we're part of what we're trying to do is change the mindset. It doesn't need to be a lot of heavy, expensive automation. There's lightweight and simple things that can be done. And so for CloudSort, that's kind of, how can we do it in a simple way? Like, those are some of the questions we ask. We're not interested in adding complexity and making a show. We just want to simplify things, eliminate steps. In our view, that creates value.
And I think that's probably where the AI, model comes into play for you guys, is how many steps of this process can we remove? Is that a safe assumption?
Absolutely. You're exactly right. It's a combination of eliminating steps and having these smaller connected nodes. Like that, it wouldn't have been possible. I don't know how it would have been possible decades ago, because the computational power required to do that, because there's so many permutations and combinations when the number of nodes is in the hundreds or thousands. These are very difficult problems to solve, and it can be complex. So the computational power has to be there, or, again, it's an enabler for what we do, but we certainly use it to help do what you said, eliminate steps and route things in a smart way.
Yeah, because I think that's sort of the promise of all of this new AI technology that's coming into this space. I mean, ChatGPT just had a major announcement yesterday that, and a big part of it, but often ignored part of it, is how much of the data processing that they've cut off from the original GPT, notion. So now that we're in a phase where, something that was, $10,000 in computing costs is now, roughly around $5 or $6, which is amazing. So I'm seeing it more and more happen on the logistics side of things as well, where you have just this massive amount of data, and these modern day tools like this, like CloudSort, is going to be able to help you solve the problems that you're already experiencing so much faster, so you can focus on these other things that make more sense, that make more business value sense. And then ultimately, hopefully it creates what did you call it earlier, the compounding interest that you're going to get from, these types of investments. All right. So
absolutely.
Now, as we kind of, sort of round out this interview, how do you see sort of CloudSort we're evolving in maybe the next year, the next couple of years? I know I'm not going to ask 5 years out, because nobody can tell that at this rate. But how do you see CloudSort sort of evolving in the ecosphere or ecosystem?
Yeah, I think part of it is just as people become more aware of this, more comfortable with working with us, we're not, we'll onboard more clients, enable more nodes. That allows the software to learn more. And again, we're happy to execute or provide recommendations on how things should be routed. Some clients are going to continue to want to, they're smart. I don't discount what they need done. We're happy to execute those things. So certainly add more nodes. The software will continue to advance. We have, I think those are two important things that happen in the coming months and year. I think that, no one knows what's coming, for this next peak as far as package delivery goes. There's some talk about excess capacity that's out there. That may be true, but that doesn't, regardless of whether the capacity is excess, it may not be needed at all, and let's find ways around it. And the excess capacity may be in specific markets. So there may be a lot of capacity in one area, but not a lot of capacity someplace else. So we're certainly looking at those opportunities. I think there's been a lot of investment in some of the major metro areas, but some of those second and third tier markets have maybe not enjoyed the growth and capacity that they need. So I don't know. All this remains to be seen. But for CloudSort, it's more nodes, just really creating a system where clients can test and learn. We want it to be super easy. Procurement process with us should be simple. It doesn't need to be a huge RFP. It can be, hey, here's an area that's interesting. Let's experience it. Let's fall in love with it, and let's grow. We want to be easy to do business with.
And it almost sounds like there's an environmental angle as well. If you're, even a carrier and you're looking for space on your truck, or if you're a shipper looking for space within a warehouse, that might be a little bit closer to a delivery route for you. It sounds like there's also an environmental angle. I think that, or a positive environmental angle that can be part of these use cases as well. So you're optimizing the routes that you're already having, or you're optimizing routes, that you could be taking advantage of. Is that, I think does that play a role at all?
Absolutely. It's a little bit topical. We don't lead with that. It's not, but it's certainly a hugely beneficial side effect of what we're doing. We always have the environment in our minds, of course. And as we're consolidating loads and routing things more directly and more efficiently, absolutely. We're trying to think of ways how to quantify that benefit. We haven't quite landed on the right way yet, but it's certainly a part of how we think about things.
For sure. And I think too, the biggest selling point, I think, for me during this conversation was not just the efficiency, but also from the fact that you can get set up in as little as a day. I've been part of too many tech integrations where it takes weeks and months, sometimes years. God forbid if you want to get a new TMS added to your system, and that to me is just. But that was also 10 years ago, so it's cool to see the advancements in technology in this space.
Absolutely. Yeah, we think it's important. Again, it ties into that for CloudSort, the desire to really be easy to do business with, create a system that it's easy to test and learn. Like it has to be easy, or at least easy to get an understanding on if it works for the client or not, and then we can build from there.
100%. Set it up in less than a day, I think is a major achievement. So Derek, kudos to you and your team. Where can folks follow you, follow more of the work of CloudSort, all that good stuff?
Yeah, best place to go. It's just cloudsort.com. We keep regular updates on any new releases, capabilities, thought leadership. Yeah, all of that can be found on cloudsort.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Derek, and I appreciate your time and insight today into the middle mile.
Absolutely. Very much my pleasure. Appreciate it.